Frankly, the first time I heard it, it didn't do much for me. It didn't mean anything. I didn't think it was particularly memorable. Still, it had potential, and at least it had business, not technology, as its core idea. But we couldn't just plop it into our ads, speeches, and sales calls. We had to infuse the term with meaning and get others in the industry to use it. And we had to strike a balance. We wanted to be seen as the architects of e-business, the agenda setter for this new era, but we decided not to trademark the term e-business. We wouldn't make it an exclusive IBM term or idea. It was more important to build an awareness and an understanding around our point of view. Creating that environment would require massive investments, both financial and intellectual. Our executives first unveiled e-business during a Wall Street briefing in November 1996. It didn't get a particularly enthusiastic reception. Many months later, our advertising agency, Ogilvy and Mather, developed a memorable TV advertising campaign featuring black and white office dramas. They worked because they portrayed the confusion most customers felt about the internet, and they also explained the net's real value. The commercials were an immediate hit. This was encouraging. From there, we revamped all of our marketing communications, from our trade show presence to direct mail campaigns. Every senior executive made e-business a part of his or her presentations and speeches. We communicated frequently on the subject to our people so that they could understand and then evangelize. To date, IBM has invested more than $5 billion in e-business marketing and communications. That's a lot of money, but the returns paid to our brand and our market positioning are incalculable. I consider the e-business campaign to be one of the finest jobs of brand positioning I've seen in my entire career. In some ways, it might have been just a little too successful. In the process of waking up the world to the idea that the net was about business, we might have inadvertently contributed to the spectacular rise and fall of the dot-coms. The Emperor's New Economy, Indiana, a way that I found astonishing, though by this time I should have known better. Almost as soon as the marketplace accepted the idea that the net was a place where real work would get done, that straightforward idea morphed into the dot-com mania of the late 1990s. Somehow the internet came to be seen as some kind of magic wand. In the right hands, it could overturn everything from basic economics to customer behavior. It spawned a new class of born-on-the-net competitors who were going to destroy existing brands and entire industries overnight. Remember the new economy? It would replace old-fashioned business metrics like profit and free cash flow with page views, eyeballs, and a stickiness. Based on nothing more than a website, companies with no earnings and no prospects of ever operating in the black were awarded market valuations that exceeded many of the world's most respected companies. If you weren't a dot-com, prevailing wisdom said you would be dot-toast. And so here we were, having first advanced the idea that the net was a medium for real business, watching this wild but totally unsustainable wave of dot-com hysteria crest, then ultimately collapse during 2000. I'd like to say something appropriately high-minded, like, the courage of our convictions prevented us from joining this fool's gold rush. In hindsight, the truth is that I'm still a little puzzled by just how easy it was for us to detach ourselves from the dot-conference. In a speech to Wall Street analysts in the spring of 1999, I had a little tongue-in-cheek fun with the very serious subject of what was real and what was simply unreal. These are interesting companies, and maybe one or two of them will be profitable someday. But I think of them as fireflies before the storm, all stirred up, throwing off sparks. But the storm that's arriving, the real disturbance in the force, is when the thousands and thousands of institutions that exist today seize the power of this global computing and communications infrastructure and use it to transform themselves. That's the real revolution. What did we learn? What were the real lessons after all the meteoric ascents and equally rapid flameouts? For customers, I think the overriding lesson was that those who didn't get distracted and were willing to do the hard work had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, not just to do things better and faster, but to do things that, in fact, they'd never been able to do before. As I write this, customers continue to make major investments to drive transformation through e-business, and they will continue making those investments for the foreseeable future. For investors as well as customers, the lesson was no shortcuts. I think for a lot of people, the E in e-business came to stand for easy. Easy money. Easy success. Easy life. When you strip it down to bare metal, e-business is just business. And real business is serious work. For IBM, the lesson was about rediscovering something we'd lost. We found our voice, our confidence, and our ability once again to drive the industry agenda. Our messaging allowed our customers to see benefits and value that were not being articulated by our competitors. The concept of e-business galvanized our workforce and created a coherent context for our hundreds of products and services. The vast new challenges of networked computing re-energized IBM research and triggered a new golden age of technical achievement for the company. Most important, the investment did what we wanted to do at the outset: re-establish IBM's leadership in the industry. 19. Reflections on strategy. As I look back on the strategic bets we made and how they've played out over the past 9 years, I am struck by a conflicting impression. On one level, so much about IBM has changed. On another level, very little is different. If you were to take a snapshot of IBM's array of businesses in 1993 and another in 2002, you would at first see very few changes. 10 years ago, we were in servers, software, services, PCs, storage, semiconductors, printers, and financing. We are still in those businesses today. Of course, some of those businesses have grown enormously. Others have been refocused. But we have exited just a few segments of the industry. And we have not made gigantic acquisitions to launch us into entirely different industries. My point is that all of the assets that the company needed to succeed were in place. But in every case, hardware, technology, software, even services, all of these capabilities were part of a business model that had fallen wildly out of step with marketplace realities. There is no arguing that the System/360 mainframe business model was brilliant and correct when it was conceived some 40 years ago. But by the late 1980s, it had become fatally outmoded. It had failed to adapt as customers, technology, and competitors changed. What was needed was straightforward but devilishly difficult and risky to pull off. We had to take our businesses, products, and people out of a self-contained, self-sustaining world and make them thrive in the real world. On a technical level, as I've described, this required the non-trivial task of moving our entire product line, all of our servers, operating systems, middleware, programming tools, and chipsets from proprietary to open architectures. That alone could have killed us. Many IT companies that have built their businesses on some proprietary product have tried to leap across that chasm. Few have made it across successfully. This is more than a technical decision to adopt and support a bunch of industry standard specifications. For IBM, breaking with our proprietary past meant walking away from all the historic architectural control points. It meant stepping onto a competitive playing field that was open to all comers. The implications of this kind of leap to a company's economic model can be devastating. In IBM's case, it meant the collapse of gross profit margins and the attendant changes we had to engineer to lower our cost structure without compromising our effectiveness. Yet the hardest part of these decisions was neither the technological nor economic transformations required. It was changing the culture, the mindset and instincts of hundreds of thousands of people who had grown up in an undeniably successful company, but one that had for decades been immune to normal competitive and economic forces. The challenge was making that workforce live, compete, and win in the real world. It was like taking a lion raised for all of its life in captivity and suddenly teaching it to survive in the jungle. This kind of wrenching cultural change doesn't happen by executive fiat. As I found, I couldn't flip a switch and alter behaviors. It was, by any measure, the hardest part of IBM's transformation, and at times I thought it couldn't be done. Part 3. Culture. 20. On corporate culture. Back in the early 1990s, when a person saw or heard what words and images came to mind? Big computers at IBM. PC and ThinkPads maybe. But inevitably they would also think. Big company, conservative, regimented, reliable, and dark. Suits and white shirts. What's interesting is that these latter descriptions refer not to products or services, but to people and a business culture. IBM may be unique in this regard. The company has been known as much for its culture as for what it made and sold. Even today, if you pause and think IBM, chances are you'll think of attributes, hopefully very positive ones, of a kind of enterprise and its people rather than of computers or software. I have spent more than 25 years as a senior executive of 3 different corporations, and I peeked into many more as a consultant in the years before that. Until I came to IBM, I probably would have told you that culture was just one among several important elements in any organization's makeup and success, along with vision, strategy, marketing, financials, and the like. I might have chronicled the positive and negative cultural attributes of my companies, positive and negative, from the point of view of driving marketplace success. And I could have told you how I went about tapping into or changing those attributes. The descriptions would have been accurate, but in one important respect I would have been wrong.